Okay, hello everyone. I'm back with part two of this sort of reborn yapping slash hero tier list. Um, it's been a little bit longer than I intended between the two videos, but whatever. What can you do? One big change is I've updated the little graphic on the right because I've played quite a few games since then. And I've tried a few additional reborns since then. Um, One of the biggest ones being Eslo. So before I kind of get into the second half of Heroes, I actually want to change Eslo's ranking. I don't think he deserves this question mark anymore. I think without the Reborn, he is a hero that in theory scales crazy good, but in reality is a little underwhelming because of his projectile being just not very ideal. But I do think having tried the Reborn version, admittedly, I tried it in Army of One. I was surprised that this Hero Mastery thing even counted Army of One games, but feels a little cheap, honestly. But whatever. I did do it, and that's not like the ideal test because you get so many items. But it was, as expected, really strong. I think it sounded pretty good to begin with. And yeah, I even I messed up a little even with how I did his items. I like accidentally swapped a couple things out at the end that I shouldn't have. And it was still insane. And I'm sure that even in a normal game, as long as you can reborn him, he's good. I think that puts him on A tier. I think it's kind of the exact same thing as James, where I don't love the hero as the base hero, but the reborn is such like an insane hyper carry that I feel like it's worthy of putting pretty high up. Um, Especially because I've also been like when this Reborn update first came out, I lost quite a few games in a row, or even if I didn't completely lose them, I failed in Act 4, which is like still technically counts as a win, but doesn't feel like a win. But recently I feel like I've kind of got the hang of Reborn, and the game's feeling almost easier than before with the potential to reborn heroes, and I might try doing the Impossible Plus game modes again, which do require you to have, because I feel like in some of these games I'm winning even despite some obvious inefficiencies. The Impossible Plus game modes kind of demand you really get up your DPS and get up your tankiness. So, if I'm trying that again, these kind of big hyper carries that have been filling up my A tier category so far will be important. So I don't know. Anyway, that's extremely tangenty and yappy. Let's get on to the heroes that I haven't done yet. Um, so we ended with the ice section. It's actually, I think, a bit more than half to go, but what can you do? So, yeah, let's do these, I guess, ethereal heroes, I think is this light blue color. We have Emily. Her reborn is really simple. It's one of these die ones. When she dies, or would die, she becomes invulnerable for 10 seconds, gains a ton of attack speed, and then dies. Um, I used this one recently, and I kind of just did it as a throwaway, because the other heroes I was using in the lineup had already done reborns of, and I thought I'd just try it. And I was surprised. It was actually pretty decent. I could just kind of use her as a sub tank. It didn't care if she died. In fact, if the fight began getting hard and she did die, that massive attack speed boost is so insane. It's basically just, I think it's, I'm trying to remember what max attack speed in this game is. I think it's like halfway to max attack speed. Um, and then the fight suddenly becomes easy. So I was surprised by that, and I feel she was already a pretty good damage dealer before that. It's not like the most amazing reborn effect, especially for like a big damage dealer. It's kind of the same opinion I had on the items that focus on dying. Just realized this is the wrong zoom. Whoops. There we go. We're missing some of the heroes. Whoops. Okay. What was I just saying? Yeah, it's kind of a similar opinion on the items where planning that much around a hero dying doesn't feel good, but I think the base hero is pretty solid, and the reborn is definitely an option. Even if it's maybe not the greatest thing to work around, I will say 10 whole seconds of invulnerability is pretty insane. Especially with that big attack speed boost, I definitely think you can get shit done. So I'm not really sure where I want to put her. I'm trying to remember where I put her last time. I think maybe just A tier. Solid damage. She gets a lot of attacks off too. Her like the way her spell works lets you get a lot of attacks off. And then you get attack speed on top of that if you reborn her. So yeah, anyway, yap yap yap. Pretty solid. Next up we have Vinrak. His reborn is kind of interesting. He ditches the whole ethereal amp concept um, in exchange for a lot more attack speed. And as an added bonus, he generates surge, which is kind of nice. I have this is another one that I have tried. Let's go back to the tier list here. Kind of see on the right, he's got the orange check mark, I believe. Which actually does he? Did I even win that one? I might have lost. No, I lost the one. I reborned him in. What can you do? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a certain item that I feel like makes this hero feel very good. This little skull wand thing that allows you to gain double mana. Because that means you can just cast your ult basically perfectly, um, regardless of what your mana is. So that's kind of nice. And if I don't have that, I feel like I don't know, if I don't have that one item, I feel like I don't like the hero as much. There's a couple other ways to kind of do it, but with less precision. Other just ways to like gain more mana. But otherwise, he has just an innate downtime on his buff, which is really lame. And I don't think the Reborn is like incredible. It kind of makes him more useful in non-ethereal lineups and gives him some good um, utility potential. The additional attack speed means you can get off more proc-based stuff, be it debuffs or stuns, and the surge level is obviously useful for its own reason. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not crazy about this hero, and I feel like the Reborn isn't great. I believe I put him C tier last time, and he's going to stay there. If I put him higher, then consider it a downgrade. I do think he feels a little underwhelming right now compared to some other heroes. Next up, we have Zanmar. This is a funky one. This used to be like, I don't know if it still is. I'd have to look at my old pictures, but this guy used to be like my fastest Act 4 boss kill and one of my highest DPS on like a particular run. But it was a funky run. I don't think it's I think he's a little bit of a hard hero to pull off. His Reborn, which I haven't tried at all. It basically turns him into a stun bot instead of this funky damage dealer. That's pretty nice. I can definitely see that having purpose. 2% chance per shock, so as long as you had 50 shock, that's every single attack is a 1.25-second stun, which is crazy. Um, Interesting. Yeah, he's a little hard to get going. You know, you want to get him spell power, you also want to get him the usual auto attacker stuff, attack speed. He likes damage as well. He can do both. Get you a guy that can do both. Sorry, he's not a frog on this. He's still the old model. Um, I do actually think some recent changes to the game they've added a lot of items that focus around having both attack speed and spell power. And I think that's right up Zanmar's alley. So I think, over time, even though the item pools got more diluted, I actually think it's favored Zanmar, because I think these new items do a lot more for him than some of the old items did. Um, and so even though he is a bit of a weird hero, I do think he's easier to use than he used to be. And on top of that, even though I haven't tried it yet, the Reborn does sound quite handy if you ever pick him up and end up just wanting to slot him into more of a utility slot. Because that's a ton of stun. That's crazy. 100, basically, you could very easily get up to 100% stun on him. It would be long stuns too, because it's 1.25 seconds default, but the shock is going to increase the length of that, and then he has pretty decent base attack speed already. You're probably going to go even higher with items. I think I'll give him an A tier. I think he's almost thinking to myself, maybe I should be using him more. I will say I do think he's a little annoying in he requires spell damage, but he's dealing F damage, which are kind of like they aren't super related. Most of the time, spell damage is more tied to spell damage and frost, whereas F damage is tied to fire. Then he also has the shock. There's just a lot of different things going on. Um, an F damage dealer that wants spell power can also totally use attack damage and also wants shock. Um, and I do find the whole self-buff things to always be a little annoying, because you don't want them to be casting it too often. Like, they're casting every 2 seconds, they're just wasting time casting it. Maybe I should turn him down just for that reason, but no, I think he's actually pretty good now. I think at this point in time, the fact he can utilize so many different stats, I see as more of an upside than a downside. I think there's just a lot of different items you can use. All right, I'm going too slowly. Let's move on. Chris, I think is my new like highest DPS. I don't think he had the best time, but he had crazy DPS in the hands last flame fight. I did like I think it was 40k DPS I had on a recent game, semi-recent game, which was crazy. Um, let's talk about his Reborn. I think I keep considering it, and then I keep not doing it. His Reborn takes his active from being this like a damage slash attacking thing to just a bunch of healing based off max mana, which is kind of weird. There's definitely a point that this would be useful. I just feel like even if you don't want to go full damage on him, I feel like his normal active is pretty good for applying, debuffs and stuns, the on attack effects, because you can give him some attack speed, and then he's also, every time he casts his spell, he's gonna deal a bunch of pseudo attacks. So I feel like he already has pretty good utility in the base hero, and I find it hard to justify the Reborn, but I'm sure there's some specific lineups where it's good. The main thing that comes to mind is the Mushroom Origin, which allows you to turn overhealing into damage on the enemy. That would obviously be really good for this. Um, and I'm sure there's some good combos you could do where you get a lot of max mana and then also still able to cast pretty constantly. I don't know. It's the Reborn's funky. It's one of my maybe I don't know. I don't have a super positive feeling about it. I don't know if that much healing is really that useful in this game. Especially compared to what the hero normally does. But I don't know. The hero I think is still pretty good normally. Um, just a nice little jack of all trades: auto attacks, spell damage, ethereal damage, some healing. So I'm gonna put him decently high. I feel like these high tiers are getting too full. There's so many heroes that I kind of had a meh feeling about before that I've gained a lot of liking of because of their Reborn. Um, oh, I should mention, I feel like I forgot to mention it last video, and I meant to mention it at the beginning of this one, I forgot. The tier list is kind of a how much I want to pick the hero thing, as compared to like just purely how I perceive their strength, although their strength does mean a lot. So I don't know. I know I feel like my bottom tier is gonna be too empty, but I don't know. I do like this guy a lot. I've been picking him more and more. I feel like he's always useful. I feel like he's just one of those heroes that there's just so much you can do with him. Kind of like a Zanmard, but like better. No, I'm actually gonna go all the way at S plus. I've been really liking Chris recently. I feel like he's really solid. All right, let's switch back to a game because we're into the flame now, which is kind of ethereal, but not really, I guess. Atrios. I mean, let's just. I'm actually typing letters. Go back to the tier list real quick. You'll notice Atrios. He was for the longest time my most picked hero. I guess Blake overtook him recently, but it should go without saying that he is going to be S tier. But let's not even talk about the S tier. I think that or S plus tier. Sorry, that's just obvious. Let's talk about his Reborn. That's meant to be most of the purpose of this video. I think it's really sick. Basically, once you get up to a certain amount of burns, he stops. He goes into a berserk mode. I think this is the only Reborn that they call berserk mode, but there's actually quite a few tanks that I think are effectively, you could call it berserk mode, and I'll bring it up when we go across them. But this is the one they actually call berserk. Basically, once you get 20 burns, he gains a ton of attack speed and a massive burn damage amplification, and stops casting. The downside with this is that Atrios is a pretty good tank caster. For starts, your passive, which is mana regen, becomes completely useless once you enter berserk mode. And if you've built around him casting, which I often do, then this Reborn is not a good choice. But I do like that it opens up another avenue, and I've had a couple of games with it where it's been really effective. I've had games where it was really effective as a damage dealer, and I've had games where it's really effective as just tanking up with on-hit effects. I just think it's kind of cool. I think it's a cool alternate way to play a hero I already really liked, and I'm a really big fan of it. Yeah, and he's S plus tiers. He's one of my favorites. Next up is Ola. So this change is that it's really weird. It basically just increases the amount of burns. So instead of dealing 3 burns over 3 strikes, she does 9 burns over 3 strikes. And then in exchange for that, you lose a lot of the base damage with a spell and the ability to gain attack damage. So basically, you trade out any ability of this hero to deal lots of damage in exchange for applying lots of debuffs, which is interesting. I definitely think that it's nice to have some reborns that aren't just making them better damage dealers and are more of a utility option. That being said, because there's only one reborn available per game by default, I very often do find myself making like I want to make a damage dealer more effective is like the higher priority. But if you're in a game where you don't really want your damage dealer to be reborn, I can definitely and you have Ola and want Flame, I can see it being kind of useful. I just feel like it's probably gonna be less picked than some of the other ones, at least personally. I don't really have those stats recorded to check over time, but that's my gut feeling. The hero I think's okay. Um, probably kind of similar to Vinrak, where I feel like the hero was kind of okay before, and now the Reborn doesn't change much of anything. So relative to other heroes, my opinion's maybe gone down just slightly. So I'm gonna put her in B tier. It's like an okay hero, but there's definitely some pretty wild things you can do. But I don't know. It's kind of whack. Like her passive, and I don't know. It's weird to get all her different parts working together to really maximize the effect of the hero. It's not like bad. It's just other heroes are easier to pull off, I guess. Okay. Egar. Did I try this one? I don't think I did. Let me look at my list real quick. Oh, apparently I did. Apparently I won with this hero reborn, so I definitely did try it. Okay, let's read it real quick. So he begins dealing the burn or frost every attack instead of every other attack, which is great. I do feel like that one can feel a little underwhelming compared to like the items that do it every attack. Then when he consumes frost, he heals more, and his axe, it's exactly the same. Okay, no, it does less damage, but it deals instant attacks. Yeah, it deals 4 instant attacks. So kind of like a what's her face? Like kind of like an Emily sort of hero. I think did I even run her with Emily? I don't remember. I don't think so. Um, so yeah, I mean, this just is like you give up on the damage dream and you become more utility. You apply a lot more debuff. I think that's the big thing. Applying 1 burn of frost every attack instead of every other attack is already huge. That's double the debuff by default, and then on top of that, you're also dealing a bunch of instant attacks to do more debuff. I think he just becomes a debuff machine. And on top of that, it becomes a little bit better at self healing, which can be handy if he's filling like a semi-tank role, um, in exchange for just not really being good damage anymore, which is fine because even though I feel like he should have the ability to deal good damage in theory, like 300 base damage on a spell that then has an additional scaling via the burn that he applies himself. Like I always feel like he should have the ability to do a ton of damage, and it just never works. So I think having a reborn that pushes him more towards the utility role he so often fills is good. I like this reborn. I've always kind of liked Eager more than I should. Like if you look at my pick rate, he's all the way up here, which is way higher than he should be. 'Cause he's really not that impressive of a hero, but I don't know. I just keep coming back to him for whatever reason. Kind of same as Korra. Like I've never really liked Korra that much, but I just keep picking them to try and make them work. But I think with Eager, the Reborn's pretty good. He's still not incredible, so I think we put him at B tier because I do pick him a lot. Gotta give him credit for that. And I do think the Reborn helps. I just don't think he's amazing. Um, right back to the hero list. Blake, my most picked hero right now. Um, I mean, I do think he's a really great damage dealer. His base damage is low, like notably low, and his base attack speed I don't think is low, but it could be higher. I think, yeah, so like some of the archer types have a point 0.9, but point 0.5 isn't bad, and then he has very good base crit. And on top of that, he can get up to 40% attack damage, which is great, and his spell scales with everything, which is nice. His actual spell power scaling sucks because it's only 50 base damage, so you're only getting half a damage for every one spell power, but the fact it scales with attack damage and attack speed is great. Yeah, and his Reborn is very interesting. He begins permacasting, so he just casts his spell every single attack, no longer inflicts the burns, no longer gets his old passive. But in exchange, every time he deals damage, he gains a shield, um, and he gets a bit of a boost to his spell power. I guess to make up for the shitty base spell power. I don't know. I have used this one. I have one with this one. I think it's pretty cool. I would say more often than not, I probably wouldn't consider reborning, or I don't know how to say it. The dev words it so weird in his update. I usually wouldn't reborn Blake. I feel like it's not an obvious change. Like there's a couple things to keep in mind. First of which is any item that is like an on-hit effect. So like every attack, they no longer work at all. Even though his spell scales with attack damage and is kind of looks like his normal attack, it's not an attack. So any on attack thing doesn't work. That's really important to keep in mind. And he's also losing that War Machine passive. So if you were hoping to, scale up with attack damage, you're a bit worse at that now. But I do think that gaining a shield with every attack is very interesting. Um, I think the fact that it's effectively all your attacks become AOE because that active is an AOE spell, and that can be quite handy. The 30% spell power is nice; it helps. I don't know if it's worth totally going into spell power still because it's like I said, 50 base damage on the spell sucks. Attack damage might still be more effective. But there's a lot of stuff you can do here. The one important thing to note is that max. This is true for a few heroes, but any of these heroes that either permacast or don't cast anymore, you can just ignore. Like max mana no longer becomes a problem. So you can get a bunch of mana increasing heirlooms on him, and it just they're really good. They just have no downside. You could even build around that harder and have stuff that like increases your other stats based on your max mana. And you can also build into the shield if you want. He should be kind of like perma shielded, so you can always go with the various items that increase your attributes based on shield. Um, there's some that don't work because there's one I'm thinking of that I forgot the name of. I guess we could look real quick because I am in the codex. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah, the Hound's Shield. That would not work on him, I believe. Unless maybe it would work with Omni Crit. I'm not sure. But I don't know. It's a very interesting reborn. It's another interesting way to play the hero. It doesn't massively. I mean, I don't know. It's cool. I guess I can't really say it increases my opinion too much because my opinion was already maxed out on Blake. He's just the coolest guy. But it's kind of interesting. I probably won't use it most games I pick him, but whatever. It's there. Let's yap less. Oh God, please die. Can't make this a three-parter, surely. But we're going so slowly. Magmus, his new reborn. He applies slightly less burns, and he no longer gets his burn damage amp thing. And he does less damage, but he gives your whole team defense based on burns. I think this is really cool. Like, I think this is a really cool utility thing. I have used it once. Did I win with it? Yeah, it looks like I did. That being said, I do remember it being a little underwhelming at least until I got a lot of burn creation. I think if you look at the numbers here, Oh no, it is 100% burn, but ice is every time you cast. I don't know. It definitely takes a little bit to really get that defense up to an insane level. Um, but it's okay. I'll say I don't love Magmar as a hero. I think the ability to use him as a damage dealer is almost non-existent. It's not non-existent. It just sucks. It's it's not good. Like he can do some damage. I've had games where he's done some damage in like Act 2, but I feel like hard scaling him is really hard. Um, he is kind of nice as like just a debuff applier. He has 0.9 base attack speed, and he further increases it with his cast, with his base passive, which is nice. I don't know. He's okay. I don't. I feel like it's. I feel like I'm doing dirty putting him in C. But I almost feel like I have too many B heroes. You know. What a hard choice. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's going up here. He's meh, 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 meh. You know what? C tier. Yeah. He's just okay. I do think the Reborn helps a lot, but because at least it's an option. But once again, as I said before, you're definitely more inclined to Reborn your big damage dealer if it's a viable option, which makes all the utility ones kind of less cool. It's cool. Like I think it's more interesting than more damage, but I'm also realistically less likely to use it. Okay, Pyro. He, his Reborn is really funny. It makes his spell absolutely massive, and it also applies a ton of burns, and it still does the whole spell power gaining thing, which is cool. His passive is disabled, but it doesn't even really matter because the downside of this Reborn is that your cast time is tripled. And I found that with very little mana regen, I was able to permacast just because each cast takes so long. Um, so you know, it was very cool. At first, I thought this was gonna be more damage, but I think in reality, this is actually more of a utility change. Like, yeah, he does get more spell damage by dealing more burns, but because he's casting so much slower, I think your like max possible DPS is lower after a reborn. Um, but the handy thing is that he turns all these other. He doesn't even turn them. He just utilizes other debuffs to get more burn, which can be pretty powerful, and it is also just hilarious. I previously had this guy ranked like S plus, and that was definitely too high. I think when I was newer at the game, I tended to just default way too hard to just burn strategies. And yeah, if you're every single strategy you run applies a bunch of burn, then Pyro is just a very good slot in. But if you aren't running burns, he's just a shit hero. So yeah, I think I'll put him a lot lower than I had him before. Um, honestly, I'm gonna put him all the way in C tier, which may seem a little mean, but if you don't have burns being applied, then he's not useful. And even with the reborn version, he's only useful if you want burns and don't have them. It's kind of like the opposite problem, I guess. But I do think he's just very hard to slot in. He's dropped on my pick rate consistently. I think he was even higher before. Now he's 1.7. I think he's just going to keep going down because as I don't know, as I try more diverse strategies, I feel like he's less and less relevant. But you know, I still like the hero, but you know, I just don't think I'll be picking him as much as I used to. Um, that's the end of the flame category. All right, we're moving on. We're moving on. Next up, we have, I guess, shock. Except Mr. Pumpkin doesn't apply shock. He's just a stun hero. So I don't know what he's doing here. But anyway, Mr. Pumpkins. His reborn. Um, you deal damage instead of stun. It still has the same concept where if you cast, you screw yourself over, but you can also increase your max mana by casting. And if you're, you know, getting a lot of spell power to utilize this Pumpkin Storm, you'll probably only cast once per fight, which is ideal. I think it's really hard to avoid casting at all because you start fights with half mana. But it is theoretically possible, at least if you had the right item. I don't know if that item would combo great with spell power. I don't think I've used this Reborn. Yeah, definitely haven't used it yet. It's kind of interesting. I think it's nice to have the option to turn him into a damage dealer because the base hero has zero ability to deal damage. He has 100% utility, or maybe like I don't know, 70% utility, 30% tank. Um, so I think the ability to turn into a damage dealer is very cool. He's also just a cool hero. He's a cool guy. We'll put him in the A tier. He can be. Oh, well, that was not a very good screenshot, is it? Like half the extra shit. Whatever. Whatever. Sorry, I never even switched the tier when I. Oh, I've been trying to do that less this video, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's okay. He's some decent stun. I do think he's a little annoying to get moving. The fact that like he doesn't really do anything with spell amp and attack damage unless you reborn him is a little annoying. I think theoretically you could do him as a right clicker. I guess he does have a nice base crit chance, but it'd be a little weird. I don't know. He's okay. Do I even want to put him this high? You know what? I'm sorry, Stonks. But I think I'll actually put him B tier. I do like him, but uh, he's a little weirder to slot in than other heroes. I think is what I'll say on that. Zots. Okay, I like Zots. I think he's a cool hero. I think the offensive balance is fun. And Hours of Thunder is okay. It's a decent base damage without having crazy long cast time. I always directly compare him to Marco. Marco is twice the damage, but the cast time is obscene. Zots, I think, because you're getting buff from it, is a little more designed around casting it more constantly, so it casts a lot faster while still having decent base damage. So I think he's cool. I think he's a hero that has benefited from all these new, just like I said with Zanmar. He's a hero that's benefited from some of the new items quite a lot. So he's solid. I like him. What's his reborn? He increases his damage dealt. Oh. Yeah, so I have not used this one. He can basically get a ton of damage. He becomes an absolute super carry. But the trade-off is that he starts the fight stunned. And you need your team to deal stuns in order to utilize him, which is really funky. I think it's pretty interesting. And I don't know, the hero looks cool. The hero's concept is kind of fun, I think. But, God, Reborn is fucking wacky. I think I'm just going to put him with all the other hyper carries on A tier. I don't know. Kind of weird how they're all ending up in the same place, but what can you do? Did I say A tier? I meant S tier. I'm even tempted to put him higher, honestly, but yeah, I think this is fine for now. I think this is fine for now. Sorry. Didn't switch to tier list again. There he is, S tier. Very pog. Okay, next up we have Zog. Zog does his shield and mana thing. I need to talk less about the heroes. I said I was going to focus on the Reborn. I'm not doing good at that. Okay, so instead of doing shocks, he just gives more mana. And everyone gets the each shield, the use health before shield effect. Have I used this one? I know I thought about it. Yeah, I did. I did use this one, or win with this one, I should say, because it's got the orange check mark. Yeah, I don't know. If you have a shield comp and you want to give them lots of mana, he's pretty cool. You can do it with the base hero as well, so you don't like need to reborn him, but the reborn is handy. Especially if you want everyone to maintain their shield. So yeah, no, he's okay. He's very much a utility hero. I say the one issue with him is that your team has to want the mana regen. If you have a hero that doesn't want to cast much, be it something kind of weird like Mr. Pumpkins, or even just a right clicker that doesn't want to be casting too much, like any of the self buff heroes don't want to be casting excessively. Even some of the heroes with actives, like Blake, I think doesn't want to cast his active too often, especially if you have crits going, because unless you have Omni crit, it's just less damage than your right clicks potentially. So that is the weird thing with him. That's the thing that makes him a little bit hard to use. So I don't use him a ton. I think this reflects that. I think I used to use him more, but recently I haven't used him a ton. Where is he on my little list? I've lost him. Why can't I find him? Am I blind? Am I looking too low? Is he higher than I realized? No. Oh, here he is. Zogs. Yeah, he's kind of in the middle. He's okay. He's okay. I think his it's funky how his reborn is just him doing the mana thing better. That is interesting. But the passive effect's really kind of nice. Oh, he's right at the beginning. But you know, he's just okay, I think. I don't hate him like a couple of these people, but it's just okay. Alright, moving on, moving on. Flynn. Flynn is all about that mana regen. A nice combo with Zog, I should mention. Does a bunch of stun. His passive is fucking weird. He just his cast time being instant is interesting. It means that he can just, he doesn't get hard locked by cast time. Like some like theoretically all spellcasters can get hard locked by cast time. So that's pretty cool, and it triggers the Astral Staff 4 times. That's essentially 60 damage per mana regen, which is crazy. But there's a massive downside that every time you generate mana, you take 40 damage, which is crazy. That's that. Like, if you let's say you get him up to a crazy number, right? Like, let's say you have him pumping out like 5 mana a second, um, which means he's gonna cast every 2 seconds, and he's gonna deal that's 50 mana regen. So an absolute absurd amount was that like several hundred damage every proc of Astral Staff, but he's gonna be taking 200 damage, self damage a second. He'll desperately need mana, not mana, spell vamp. It's pretty interesting. I don't know. I think Flynn's okay. Another one of those heroes that are just okay. It's kind of nice. It's the fact you can build him around around mana regen is handy. I think any mage you can build more so around mana regen tends to be pretty nice because mana regen lets them cast, and if they get damaged as well, then you not having to worry as much about spell power is just useful. I'm not really sure though. I feel like I don't pick him a ton, which I think is I mean he's above some of these other heroes. He's above the halfway mark. The stun damage combo is just nice. I don't know. I don't know anymore. We'll make him A tier. I think A tier is okay. These are too even. This is annoying me. What can you do? Okay, next up, I think this may unfortunately be a definite D tier. Azura. She does the whole HP to damage thing. Her reborn just makes her deal more shock. So instead of gaining HP based on shock, she actually applies the shock. She still has the HP scaling, mind you. She just won't be gaining tons of HP as easily. Feels like another one of these utility ones, like the hero's already decent for damage if you build it correctly. But this is an option to deal some utility and do some utility work instead. Yeah, I don't know. I really like Azura. I really do. I think it's a very fun hero to build around because I love tank and she makes tank do damage. But she's a very annoying hero to build. She's difficult to get going, and the Reborn does not address how hard she is to get off the ground. It just kind of turns her into utility, which is kind of lame. So as much as I hate to do it, I think this is as close to a D tier as we're going to get for a hero that I don't outright hate. And there's really not that many heroes I dislike right now. The Reborn fixes a lot of things, I think. It's kind of these two idiots down here. Okar and Vampire Guy, who I really do think are fucking useless. But anyway. Moving on. I guess these are like our tank guys. They're also like stun and zap, but they have different color for some reason. I don't know why. Orion. Orion, I have not used his Reborn yet, but I really want to after using runes because I have used his. But we'll start with Orion. Um, and I think this isn't called Berserk mode like Arios or whatever it's called is, but it functionally is. He stops casting, he gains attack speed, and he begins dealing additional damage. Um, it's using max mana, which is really nice for heroes that don't cast because you can just like go into max mana, right, and it doesn't have a negative effect. I do think he's a little harder to use than the previously mentioned. Why am I messing up his name? Where'd he go? No, it is Atrios. I'm just thinking of this Twitch streamer now for some reason though. So I do think it's a little harder to use than Atrios. He still applies his own shock though, which is huge because he's increasing his damage per shock. Um, it's a little harder to use though because I don't think you can so easily naturally like turn your build from the normal Orion build to the Reborn Orion build. Because max mana is something you really don't want on a normal Orion. Um, you want to be casting, and you want some tankiness. You probably still want a little tankiness since he's a melee hero, but I feel like your build would be drastically different for a Reborn Orion. Um, Unlike I think the Rune and Atrios one, where they'll have to be a little different, but they can be somewhat similar. This would have to be totally different. I do want to try it though, because it probably does have the potential to do a ton of damage. I don't know. What would you do? I guess you'd probably want like the big axes that give max mana and bonus attack speed for your heirlooms, and then I don't know, some amp and shit. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cool. I think Orion as a base hero is incredibly good. Like Orion's base hero alone, uh, he's up here. I think is an absolute S plus tier tank. I'm kind of tempted to demote him to S tier because I think his Reborn's harder to use. In fact, I will. I think I had him as S plus tier last time. I think Rune's maybe going to take his place here. We'll see. Next up, we have Rune, as I just said. Rune's Reborn have used, so instead of healing himself and taunting, he deals way more base damage. And he deals 10% additional damage per shock, which is crazy. So yeah, now when I used him, I didn't even have good shock generation. Like that was the big weakness with my build. Was the only person applying shock really was Rune. And he still just did a ton of damage. I think the fact he doesn't get healed is okay because the heal never felt great to begin with, in my opinion. Um, it was always a little underwhelming, but just because the base damage is so low, even if you have a bunch of bonus match HP, increasing the damage, it just never did much damage. But losing the taunt can be a problem. I think if you go into Act 2 and you like see the Skeleton King boss, you probably would want to reconsidering doing this Reborn, because that's a boss that absolutely punishes the shit out of you for not having a taunt. But if you can get away with a taunt without a taunt, I think this is just like it turns the tank into such a crazy damage dealer. And you don't he can still be a tank. You don't have to make him not a tank anymore. It still scales with max HP. He's still, he can still tank. Um, he can just do a lot of damage on top of that, which I think is great. And I think that's why he is my easy S plus tier pick now. I think the fact that he's already a decent tank, and you can transform him into a great damage dealer at the same time is just fabulous. Um, and I imagine I'll be picking him more often than I had been. I think I like him, maybe like him a little more than Orion now, whereas before the Reborn update, I definitely liked Orion more. Ilios, I hated this hero. Um, it just seems so stupid. He has this defense aura, which is kind of nice, but then he has this passive that's like, I don't know. You want him to be like a damage dealer or something? Why is he getting lifesteal? It's whack. That being said, I think his Reborn is quite nice. He has like a Berserk mode, as I'm choosing to call it, where he no longer casts. He gains defense equal to a percentage of his attack damage, and then he gains percentage attack damage after that. So they don't play off each other, which I guess is a bummer for you, but it's still he gets a ton of defense and he gets a ton of damage. And you can just build him, and because he isn't casting as active, you can take as many max mana items as you like, and it doesn't matter. Um, which I think is huge for all these heroes that either permacast. I like can't. I didn't. I don't think I noticed it as much when the update first dropped. It was something I've really been noticing a lot recently. When I use these heroes that either permacast or don't cast, it's like you can just go ham on the max mana items and get a bunch more base stats from your heirlooms, and it just doesn't matter, which is sick. So yeah, I think this one's kind of cool. I don't know if he's necessarily a high value pick. It's a simple, very cool reborn that I think makes him a lot more useful. I guess it's kind of the same thing as Gerald, where he goes from like a D tier to a C tier for me. I think he's pickable, but you have to want to reborn him. Like if I'm picking him, it's because I'm planning to reborn him. I still don't like the base hero. I don't think the base hero is very useful. But I do think that reborn, like if you don't want to reborn your other heroes and he's available, like he is solid. Teros. Have I used Teros's reborn? No, right? I have not. His reborn makes him gain infinite range. And what's the other thing? Oh, and it's cast towards all enemies instead of just one. And then it does less base damage, but he also gains free spell power by casting. It seems pretty cool. In my experience, it's usually better to build him around the I'll tap too much around the active than the passive, just because his attack speed's so slow. Like yeah, he's crazy crit base crit, but you're better off just grabbing some omni crit and doing casting. And I like that the reborn plays around his better playstyle. He is still kind of a bitch to use though, which is unfortunate. I think he maybe has a bit of an Azura problem. I do like his reborn a lot more than Azura. I mean that base damage drop hits pretty hard though. Against single target enemies, or sorry, against singular enemies, it's definitely gonna kind of suck. But against multiple enemies, it's really nice, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of funky. I think I think the Azura comparison is extremely valid, and for that reason, even though I think he's kind of cool, I just don't pick him a lot. And like you can see, my bottom uh row of picked heroes, it's like mostly the new heroes who I haven't picked as much just because they're new, and I haven't had as much of a chance. But yeah, so anyone else that's down there, I really don't pick much at all, and Taros is one of them. Um, so what can you do? Sad day. Okay, we're on to the like healer slash summon kind of, I don't know, heroes. Whatever this light teal is meant to represent. We have Zephyrs, I guess. Is that really his name? Zephyrs? I guess so. I've used this reborn before. He gains a bunch of free crit chance, which is really nice, given how his hero works. Um, well, kind of. And then his summons gain a percentage of his attack damage and his bonus attack speed when he casts his spell. It's interesting that the name is still called Leech Life, because that's definitely not what it does. And it scales with spell power, which is nice, so it's 10% by default. That can scale with spell power. It's alright. Basically, if he's tanky enough without leeching from his friends, and if you don't need a taunt, it's another thing where it's a tank with a taunt, which I think is generally quite useful. I will say, I used to say that any tank without a taunt was really shit. Although that's kind of true, it really does only apply to a couple enemies. And because reborns usually don't matter until the second act, I think as long as you don't see the Skeleton King boss, you can kind of get away without a taunt. That's definitely the one thing that fucks you over the most. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of cool. You can just you can go harder into buffing your summons. And if you already have crit based items, which you very likely do, um, then wonderful. You get a bunch of free crit, and you're also probably amping up your water elemental damage a ton. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. And I think Zephyr's base hero is already a decent tank. Why has my browser disappeared? Hello? It's gone. Obs? Okay, no, it's back. Alright, that was weird. Okay, Yeah, I think it's probably another S tier tank. The only reason I wouldn't put him S plus tier is because I don't really do a lot of summon builds, so even though his reborn's kind of nice, and in theory his reborn can be useful with just his summons, but it's definitely best when you have multiple summons, which isn't something I do a ton of. So for that reason, he's just S tier. But I do think he's a really good tank, even without a summon build, and the potential to reborn him to just go ham on summon damage is pretty nice. As I should also mention, losing your taunt matters a lot less with summon lineups, I think, because there is always a chance that the enemies will just re-aggro to random summons, especially if there's a lot of them on the board. So it's less of a threat of them re-aggroing to your backline. Yeah, okay. Next up is Layla. I've always liked this hero, decent tank. I feel like she's just a better version of our robot friend, XZ09, where she's kind of like a right-click tank with lifesteal. Um, but I just find her a bit easier to use. Have I used her Reborn? Where is she? I haven't won with it at least. Let's see. No, and I don't remember ever using it either. So Teddy is summoned. Yeah, shares the same HP pool, and gets the extra defense. So instead of doing the shit he used to do, which was taunt, deal some damage, heal based on it, he now every cast he gains attack damage equal. So basically, you just want to be casting. Does this mean he has 0 base attack damage? Maybe it does. Or does this mean he still has 15 base attack damage and he just doesn't get the default 20%? No idea. I assume it's still the same base, so 15 damage, 0.75 attack speed. And now to get bonus damage, he has to cast, but he gets a ton of it. I can't see myself using this Reborn a ton. It's basically if you have a summons lineup and you want Teddy to do a lot of damage. I hate that he's called Teddy, right? I feel like in terms of looks, Lila looks more like Lone Druid from Dota than Annie from League of Legends, but the fact he's named Teddy is more of a Annie vibe than Lone Druid vibe. A bit of a random point, but anyway, the bear. If you want the bear to be a damage dealer and you have summons, because I think you do want that 5% thing, and you have summons, then I guess it's fine. Whatever. I honestly exact same thing as Zephys for the tier list. I think she's a pretty decent tank that I like to use, and her reborn is kind of cool, but I probably won't use it much because I don't do a lot of summon builds. Okay, Korra next up. Yeah, Korra is one of the weirder ones. I don't know what this hero is meant to do. So if you reborn her, you get more or you shield more often, I should say, not more shield. Just shield more often. She starts the fight with 2 passives, Bronze Drake passives. So what does that end up being? It's 4 Bronze Drakes. So 4. So assuming there's no other summons on the battlefield, you would get 16% attack speed. This is 4 summons, and you have it twice. 2% per passive. 2 times 2 times 4. And this also increases her max mana, so she gets to cast less, which just feels kind of bad. I don't know. I believe I have used this one. Um, I don't think I won with it. Oh no, I did. I did win with it. Okay, my bad. It's not that interesting though. It's like if you really have nothing else to do with your reborn, it's like okay, I guess. And especially if you have a summons lineup, but I feel like if you have a summons lineup, some of the other summoners have way better reborns. So I don't know why you would just do the drakes. One thing you could do, I guess, is that if you have Joanna and you have the time machine, relic, and you can do 2 reborns. You could do Joanna's reborn and Korra's reborn. That would be kind of powerful. Or if you're just playing the game mode that lets you do unlimited reborns, um, which maybe I should play again. Maybe I'd have more fun now. I have a better idea of what to do with the reborns. But yeah, I don't know. Korra's kind of a shit hero. I use Korra a lot. Like it's in my top row. But I feel like it's because I'm like, okay, I have a tank. I have some good damage dealers. I'll just grab some random hero to deal some utility stuff, and I feel like I pick up Korra a lot. Man, I don't think she actually does much. I don't know. It's a hero I use way more than I feel like she deserves. Um, God, the Reborn is just so uninteresting. I think I have to put her D tier. Um, which is whack, given this is supposedly how often it's a tier list of how much I want to pick the hero, and I apparently pick her all the time. But I don't know why I pick her. It doesn't make any sense. What can you do? I do like her. I should mention I do like her remodel quite a lot. I think the new look with the full armor instead of like the kind of skimpy pirate clothes, I think is a lot cooler. And I think the color scheme is a lot cooler. Okay, Dagon. The list. I feel like this is the summon hero. Everything he does, his active, his passive, it's all about summons. His reborn lets him make even more summons. But the heals only heal him. They no longer heal everyone. They just heal Dagon. I guess they only change. Yeah, so you get more of them, and but oh, and they do it every attack, I guess. So they heal him a shit ton, but they don't heal other people. So you can kind of become a bit of a tank with these, which is interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Dagon's kind of whatever. Whatever. The fact I don't use a lot of summons makes Dagon a really rough hero. As you can see, right here at the bottom, kind of above the new heroes. I will say if I have a summon tank like Zephyrs, I think most of the times I use Dagon is because I'm using Zephyrs, and they do combo pretty well. Um, his Reborn is, I don't know, kind of interesting, I guess. The ability to kind of turn him into a tank is cool. The ability to have more summons is useful for any summon lineup, but I hate summons, and therefore I hate Dagon. I don't actually hate Dagon. I think, honestly, of all summon heroes, he's the most interesting, but where'd he go? I've lost him. Here he is. I've always liked his model, too. It's kind of like a golem. Everyone likes golems, right? But yeah, I just, what can I say? Yeah, don't like summons. Alright, Soul Wrath. New hero alert. What's his reborn do? Oh yeah, so his reborn, instead of dealing not dealing, instead of healing this flat amount, he instead does it based on surge level. And if you do the quick math there, it only takes like 3 surge level to be higher than the original spell. So if you get really high, he is just healing an obscene amount. Um, I think that's pretty good because his heal isn't crazy to begin with. It's not like I kind of mentioned with Chris that I feel like the heal just gets too insane. Like, why do you like with his reborn? Like, why do you need this much healing? Zolt the Zolt the Solar Wraths, I feel like it's a lot more reasonable in just a generic lineup. Um, because he's only healing like one hero for 15 or 30. Um, whereas now he's healing for like even if let's just say you don't have any surge increasing like surge level increasing items or relics or anything. Let's say you just have like 8 surge. That's what now. Oh god, I've tricked myself into doing math. That's either 48 or 96 heal. That's just so much more. It's so much more useful. So I think it's a pretty nice reborn. As for the hero's general ranking, he is the one I picked the most of the new heroes, I think. Because I think he slots into lineups pretty easily. He's just like, yeah, like I said, oftentimes I'll have the guy that I want to be my tank, and I'll pick someone for damage, and it's like, okay, now I need some utility. And Solar Wrath is just really solid utility, I feel like. Um, like you can do lots of on-hit effects with him. He has some built-in healing, and if it even comes to it, you can even go a bit of a damage route with the ethereal damage if you want, because he's applying so many attacks. Um, and dealing more ethereal damage also boosts his healing, which is nice. So, um, so yeah, what's I saying? Where am I going to put him on the tier list? Honestly, let's boost him all the way up to S plus tier. I think he's kind of like a melee version of Chris. He's all the way at the bottom here. Pretty good hero, pretty good. 10 out of 10. All right. Not really 10 out of 10, like 9 out of 10. Rose, okay, the healer hero. I used to use this hero a ton when I first started the games. It's like, oh, heals. She does heals. Heals are good. And now I feel like I barely use her at all. I tried to use her Reborn. Um, I did not win. I lost pretty badly. She basically turns herself into a tank where she becomes melee range. She gets bonus defense. Her heal's a lot stronger, but it only affects herself, and then she also taunts when she casts. In theory, I think it's pretty cool, but it's a pain in the ass. I don't know. I don't know. You gotta need to build her differently. She also has she has really high mana and not very good base tank stats. Like her base defense is 25. Like I get that she gets like some bonus defense with this Reborn, but you really need to like lay on some fucking defense. And it needs to be like defense right out the bat too. It can't be like slow scaling defense. So it's okay, but like there's already a bunch of tanks that I really like to use. Like I was really excited when I first saw this one because I was like, "Hoo tank, monkey brain activated." I just love all the tanks, but when am I actually going to use her? Because I'm already using all the other tanks, you know. Um, so I don't know, and I really don't use her much anymore as a casual hero, like the base hero, because I just don't see her healing as being as important as I used to. There's a whole bunch of other ways to get healing that are fine. Don't require a whole ass hero. So honestly, D tier. Boom. Bam. I don't know if she really deserves D tier over C tier, but for now, I think that is my opinion on her. I just don't pick her anymore. Okay. Dachi Muchi superhero Kanye West, his reborn. He gains more shield, and he stuns people instead of dealing damage. I tried using this reborn. I think this is another one I lost on. No, I won. Sorry. I think this is one of the ones where I won the first 3 acts, so it's counted as a win on the hero challenge, but I did not beat the hands. I just did not have the damage during this run, and part of that reason was probably because I reborned him, and he no longer does damage. I think his reborn kind of sucks. I think the fact he does not taunt, despite being the one tank that actively wants people to hit him, sucks. I wish that his reborn let him taunt. Um, so I don't know. I want to like this hero. He is fun when you get him going. He's a lot of fun in One Man Army. But holy fuck I find the lack of taunt annoying, because if you get to something like the Skeleton King boss, it just sucks. It's so annoying. He's also like super useless, I guess, against the enemies that just ignore him. Ones that go for lowest health. I don't know. He's okay, but like there's only room for one tank in a lineup, and it's almost always someone else. So I don't hate him though. We'll go B tier. I think B tier is reasonable. If I could find his portrait. Man, I wish I chose a different order to do this in. It's over an hour already. Holy moly. Okay, let's wrap this up. We're not wrapping this up. Alright. Let's talk about Ryu. This is probably my single favorite Reborn. So he does the whole consuming shield for damage and temporary lifesteal thing. Except now it can happen 4 times, and once he reaches the maximum amount of stacks, he goes into a berserk mode where instead of casting his active, he just begins gaining shield based on damage dealt. Basically, just a free legendary recipe. And I think this is crazy. Like I felt like I always liked Rue more than I should have. I think on my original tier list that I never released, I had him like A tier, and then when I did that new tier list a month or 2 ago, I moved him down to C tier because he has this issue where he feels good early game, and I never changed the screen. Whoops, there we go. Now you can read it. Um, has this issue where I feel like he feels good, pretty good early game, but it's just a pain in the ass to scale. Because when fights get longer and that lifesteal and magic steal runs out, it's annoying. Um, like I don't know, you don't really. It just feels weird because like, do you really want to buy lifesteal or get lifesteal on a hero that can already have like 100% lifesteal by default? No, but it will run out, so you kind of need to if you want him to survive. And then his shield just feels a lot less useful in later fights unless you're like amping up his spell damage, which I'm usually not because he's more of a right clicker. So I don't know, but this Reborn fix, it not only fixes everything, it makes him like way stronger. So instead of getting 6% attack damage, he's getting 120%. Um, and then instead of having to rely on this somewhat underwhelming active, he just starts gaining shield based on his right clicks, which is great. And if you can get him an item that gives him some shield right at the beginning of the game so that he instantly hits 4 stacks, I feel like he's just an absolute menace. Then then from there you can either build around like the shield, using the items that give him more attack damage based on shield, or I don't know, do whatever you want. Another one of these heroes that can just use max attack damage relics freely because he doesn't care because he isn't casting anymore. I think my last game with him, I had one of those superior relics for the club, so it was giving him like, what is it, like 165 damage or something, and then a bunch of max mana, but it didn't matter. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I love this one. I think it's great. I will go so far as to say that I love it so much that it single-handedly makes him an S plus tier hero. Like, I think his Reborn is just great. The only time I guess I would consider not picking him is if there's another hero I want to Reborn. But recently, the only reason I want to Reborn other heroes is because I just want to try them for this first time. I imagine if I was just like, I don't know, I guess Giga tryharding, it wouldn't even be a question. Like, Ryu would be the hero getting Reborn. And I would not be picking the other hero instead, you know. But yeah. Anyway, next is Jalen. What's his? I fairly certain I haven't used his one. Yeah, okay. So instead of giving heroes shield, um, so normally he gives heroes shield, and then he gives them a little bit of attack damage based on their shield. Instead, he gives them a lot of attack damage based on their shield, but doesn't give them shield. They have to get their own shield. Um, so that definitely has potential. I feel like it's maybe one you'd maybe do later in the game. Maybe wait till Act 3. Where, like, okay, early in the game, he's going to help them a bit with the shield, but later in the game, he's going to just, they're going to get their own shields, and then we're going to go hard on the damage. Yeah, I can definitely see that being a thing. For rankings, though, did I switch last time? I don't even remember. I do not use Jalen a lot. You can see on my usage list here, just over 1% pick rate. I don't know. There's just other utility heroes I tend to prefer. Um, I do think his new Reborn helps a bit because it helps with his late game impact a bit, I think. And when I used him recently for this new hero challenge, because it wasn't retroactive, so I had to go like win on all the heroes again. I did enjoy using him. I went a build that I really liked, where I just kind of went ham on the attack speed, and I thought it was a lot of fun going with the attack speed, which sort of combos with his passive here. But anyway, yeah, not the biggest fan of the hero, I guess. Okay, Azar. This is the hero I've had a huge turnaround on, an even bigger turnaround than Ryu, because Ryu I always kind of liked, and now I just like think is even better. Azar was my question mark hero in my original power rankings, but I've been using him a bit recently, and I actually think he's really great. I think I saw H use him. I'm like, I gotta try that guy again. Um, yeah, he just does. I didn't realize he really just does a lot of damage, and I think his Reborn effect is really fun if you have the right items to combo with it. It's not strictly useful if you don't, because all it's doing is increasing your max HP, but it's doing so at the cost of your shield. So you do deal a lot more damage with that strike, but basically you either need to be getting enough shield that you're doing that every single time for the 500% bonus damage, and or you need to be utilizing higher max HP and or higher shield total values to your advantage. Maybe like using EO's, or what's his name? Eslo's. Like if you have Eslo's passive, that's really great. If you have like Tome of Tanking, that's really great. Something like that. But once you get that going, it has potential. But I think part of my big change on him is I feel like he's good as a base hero. Like you can just pick him up and be happy, and then in certain situations you can reborn him. I feel like he just has a very good balance there. Like, some heroes like Ryu where I want to reborn every time, and there's heroes like Yachi where I never want to reborn them. I feel like Azar is a really nice balance where I'd feel fine if I don't reborn him, but in certain situations, if I get like the right items, then reborning him can be a massive power spike. So yeah, pretty cool, I think. Pretty cool. Definitely not going in the question mark tier this time. But where does he go? I actually kind of want to go A tier. But no, I'm going to go a step above, actually. I think he's better than all the heroes I've listed in A tier. I think he goes all the way to S tier. Absolutely goated comeback from the owl, man. Where is he? Where's his stupid owl face? Here we go. Owl tree. I don't know what he is. He's funny looking, and I don't like him. Except I do. Okay. Naomi. I think of all the new heroes, this is maybe the most powerful. Um, let's talk about her Reborn, though. Reborn is that instead of gaining spell power with a max amount, she gains Ethereal Lamp with no max amount. And instead of giving people shield, she deals damage based on the attack damage of the hero with the least attack damage. Which is interesting. This would imply you would need to get her attack damage at minimum. And then also everyone else on your team. But I mean, everyone else on your team you could do if you just had a right-click heavy team. I don't know. This is a weird one. I definitely will have to try it out sometime because I want to try them all out. But it does not seem like something you would just do. I don't know. It seems like you definitely have to plan around it for some reason. And I feel like the base hero is so good. Like, why would you change it all for Reborn? I don't know. Maybe it's that good. But yeah, it's pretty weird. But I really like the base hero still. What I have her at before was it S plus tier. Yeah, I don't know. Of all the like support heroes, like what you have Rose, Celeste. I think Rose and Celeste are really useless, whereas Naomi just absolutely slaps. So S plus tier for real, for real. God, do I have to make my tiers longer? I hope not. We'll see. I'm sure this won't influence my decision making. Smile. Rinji, oh god, it's another S plus tier hero. He's a mushroom, so that's an immediate plus. His reborn is insane. First of all, he just straight up gets twice the effectiveness on his passive, and he gets a much better active, at least in my opinion. I guess if you were using him as a utility hero where you merely wanted to apply debuffs, then this would be worse. But if you're using him as a damage hero, this is insane. It takes his active from being a little underwhelming. At least I think his active is usually a little underwhelming because unless you have Omni Crit, it just doesn't increase the active debuffs that much, and then you're like not attacking, which means you're losing DPS. But I even made a GIF of this one, and like it just does an insane amount of damage. It's with just a normal amount of surge, it's 12 instant attacks, and that can get even higher potentially. I think in my GIF I didn't even have I like messed up my surge levels, so he only did like 4 or 5. But still, that's insane, especially with the improved debuff mastery um, passive. So yeah, always been a great hero, and I think now on top of that, he has a really good reborn. So S plus, S plus. In fact, you know what? We're gonna do something really weird here. The order within categories doesn't matter, but I want him to be next to his brother. And we gotta get a Leeam face in the Discord too. Actually, it's gonna be necessary. Okay, Savos. This was the thumbnail actually of my last video. If no one noticed, his reborn turns into a tank, and they actually change his model, which I think is really cool. He like merges with his summon mech things because he doesn't summon them anymore. Um, and he becomes like a clockwork type hero. So I think this is like honestly one of like the coolest reborns. I think the fact he gets a unique model is awesome. Um, I think the fact that he goes from being like my single least favorite hero in the game to like okay is kind of nice. Um, I don't know. It's yet another tank that wants to work in summon lineups though. We kind of already have two of those. Um, I suppose if you had two reborns with the Time Machine Relic, you could reborn Zephys and not use him as a tank, and then reborn Savos, use him as a tank instead. Or if, once again, you're doing the Reborn challenge mode, or you just, I don't know, maybe you really can't find either of these heroes. But, yeah, I think this Reborn is hilarious. I think it's great. I think it's one of the biggest brain creative Reborns. Just completely changes the hero into something else, which is cool, because tanks are cool. And the remodel is just so funny to me. I think it's a really good remodel, too. Um, the hero is still D tier, though, because I hate the base tier hero so much. But I may in fact use the reborn version again sometime in the future because that was pretty cool. All right, where is his ugly face? I've lost him. He's this one, right? Yeah, I really despise the base hero though. It's like the most obnoxious summon hero. Puck. I don't care what the name says. This hero's name is Puck. This is one of the reborns I used recently between the first video and this one. Um, they gain a ton of max mana and a bunch of critical chance. Basically, you're going to cast less, but you're going to crit more. And their little attack speed boost thing doubles and removes its cap, which is huge. So basically, he just becomes an attack speed booster more than anything. Just gives your whole team a shit ton of attack speed, which I think is really fun. It's cool. It's like there's kind of two things you can do with Puck already. You can you always want to have a little bit of right click just because of the way the hero works. You can do it in a way that you're improving your Moonwrath with like on hit effects. Or now with the Reborn, you can just go hard into the passive. Because before, there was no point in going too hard on the passive. Because like you would hit the cap of 15 pretty fast. You can maybe go for other utility, like just applying debuffs. I've definitely done that before. Um, but now you can go for that debuff route still, but you can go with this Reborn option, and on top of applying debuffs, give your whole team a ton of attack speed, which I think is really cool. And you don't have to really worry about spell power as much if you aren't playing around the Moonwrath, just playing around the right clicks. So pretty cool. I think along with Naomi, this is like my favorite utility hero. Um, Another S plus tier. Boom. Oh god, is there gonna be two more of these? No, I don't think so. Okay, I think we're safe from having to expand the tiers because I don't think we're now into the surge category, the dark purple backgrounds. I don't know if any of these are. Would I call any of these S plus tier? My gut reaction is no, but we'll see. Naira Reborn. Oh yeah, this is I think a pretty cool thing. So it changes her passive, not her active. Whenever you surge, you gain a stack of defensive surge. Every attack you have 4% per chance to trigger an instant attack. Um, yeah, and then once you get 25 stacks, you gain attack speed instead. You go berserk basically. It's another one of these berserk style ones. I think this is really cool. Like her base passive is good. It's a really good tank passive. I like picking up this passive on any tank is good. The fact she has it as default is obviously useful. 25 stacks, so that's a bit over double the base surge. So yeah, no, it's kind of cool. This changes it so that instead of being, it kind of allows you to utilize your tankiness to do damage, which is cool. By triggering the fact that you're triggering another hero's attack effectively. Um, yeah, it's just really cool. Um, and it's I guess every time you attack, it triggers it, which is why the attack speed is useful. I think it's a really cool reborn. It's definitely a new way to play the hero. If you can get her tanky enough without her passive, she can then kind of become a damage dealer, which is cool. I suppose you don't even have to do her as a tank. I say like utilizing her tankiness, but it's not when she takes damage; it's when she attacks. So in theory, you could just have her be like a surging attack speed heavy hero and not even take hits, if you really wanted. And just enable another hero that way. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. Overall, I don't know. She's probably still not my favorite hero. I think as tanks go, she's a little boring. I feel like she always has more potential with the surge than she actually practically does. Um, probably another B tier from me. I definitely do want. I haven't tried out that reborn yet. I definitely want to soon because it sounds really cool. But yeah, overall hero is just kind of meh. IMO. It's cool, but it's meh. So yeah, all right. On to 9, the newest of the Surge heroes. Yeah, so he actually gives up some of the damage of his spell in order to stun enemies, and it's like a fat stun, by the way, 2.5 seconds. Um, so that's kind of interesting. I feel like it's a little weird to take a hero like this that's so damage focused and shift them into a utility role. Um, I will reborn them at some point because I want to do them all, but I gotta say, of all the reborns, this feels like it doesn't. I don't know. I don't know why you'd want to do it. Like there's some reborns that seem hard to use. Like you have to totally change the way the hero works. Um, and those will be hard to do. This one, I mean, you could theoretically do in any run as long as you're okay just losing some damage for a stun. I feel like it's just not that useful. It's kind of weird. I don't know. You, I yeah, the hero like everything about the hero just screams like late game damage dealer, and then the reborn is just like, what if you did less damage? I like that it's simple. I like that it's not a lot of text. But I don't know. I think maybe hooked too hard with that one or something. Um, yeah, not a huge fan. That being said, the hero as a whole is still pretty good. I think I put him A tier. I think I maybe put him higher in my new heroes tier list because I was excited by the new hero, but I think just A tier is fine. Um, there's some other heroes that are maybe a little easier to do the whole hybrid damage shit with, but he's still pretty cool. The big thing is his base passive. Like you desperately want this base passive on any of the hybrid damage dealers, so the fact he just has it by default is a huge leg up. Okay, Alora. Oh, her reborn. I have used this. Wait, did I use this or did I end up changing my mind? I definitely considered it. Where is she? She's pretty high on my list, right? Not that high. I did use it. Yeah, cool. She gets extra attack speed. She's missing HP. And every attack she inflicts bleeds and heals, and then she, in return, takes a bunch of damage. But it kind of works because she gains attack speed when she gets low. I don't know. It's a simple but effective reborn. It's nice. I feel like there's so few words, but I feel like it's even with such a short description, I feel like it's really interesting. You can build around the fact, you can kind of build around like trying to have a non maxed out HP hero. Those are kind of hard to do, I think, but you theoretically do it. She kind of has a built-in way to maintain that HP. With the way this works, you could just use her now as like just a hey, you inflict bleed utility debuff hero. Yeah, I don't know. It's just I think it's nice and simple. I think it's kind of cool. Um, yeah, not a lot to say. But I think it has some good depth to it. Um, but obviously, it's not a massive change. So you can only yap for so long. The hero as a whole is a solid damage dealer. Definitely not S plus tier, but I think probably better than A tier. I'd compare actually pretty closely to Ryu. No, sorry, this is not Ryu. This is Zico. I think I see her in the same light I see Zico. Um, yeah, I'm not gonna further explain that. But if you know, you know. I guess I don't know. She's just like a decent brawler. Um, further explaining it, that's cheating. Celeste. Yeah, so her reborn is that instead of giving people mana, she gives the team surge, which is kind of cool. She gives a big boost to the surge level by 3, and she also increases the cap, which is a very unique ability. This is, I think, the only way in the game to like infinitely increase the surge cap. Um, so that is very cool. I like that that is now a thing that could theoretically happen. I think that's cool. Um, I do hate the base hero. I find her to be one of the least effective supports, like pure utility supports in the game. Um, I think I think the thing is that she just doesn't work well early. Like if you're someone that swaps out your heroes later relatively often, I think she can work. But as an early game hero, she sucks, and since I tend to just stick with the heroes I get, I just find it very hard to make her useful. Like I just she just does nothing for the first act or so. Um like I'd just rather use Zog, and I don't even like Zog that much. This is another D tier hero. That being said, I do think that the Reborn is, if nothing else, interesting. I don't know if it's super useful. Like, if you're maxing out the surge cap instantly, like, ideally you want to be maxing out surge pretty quickly in order to utilize this surge cap increase. Only increases by 1. I wonder if you can get funky with Omni Crit on her. That would be interesting. I don't know. Question for another day, but at that point, I mean, she only has 5% base crit. We're definitely getting in some weird territory there, so. I don't know. That'll be a fun one to try, I guess, but I still don't. I can't imagine I'll be picking the hero a lot. Okay, oh yeah, Alaric. So I've been using Alaric a little more recently. I've been using Alaric and Alec. I think it's the same thing with Alec. Just like his kind of like right-clicking spellcasters with very high spell power. I think it's kind of cool. Um, this does two things. It increases the surge cap by 12, which is lit for just the team in general. And then he no longer resets the spell power gain. He just infinitely scales the spell power. So I think as Reborns go, it's a simple but really effective way to make the hero stronger. Yeah, I mean he just gains an insane amount of surge, and as a little added bonus, he's also making the team as a whole stronger potentially by increasing the surge cap. So yeah, I kind of already like Telerik, and I really really love this change. Um, Damn, is he S plus tier? I have so many S plus. This S plus tier is meaningless. There's so many of them. But hey, well, I don't know. I love them all. Where does he go though? Is he just the same as Alec? Yeah, I use him in the same way as Alec. But honestly, I kind of think I like him better. His active is just so much. Sorry, I wasn't showing the tier list. His active is so much more effective than Alec, who I have on S tier. Um, and I like his reborn more. Yeah, it's another S plus tier. I don't think S plus tier is meant to be the most filled tier, but here we are. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna get extra funky right now because we didn't even use this question mark tier. We're gonna go. Oh, son of a bitch. Oh, it's this thing. Hold up. Real weird shit here. Bum ba dum bum ba dum ba dum. Oh, there we go. All right, we're doing something funky, and this video is already too long, but we're rethinking things. I don't like how these are now touching. God, so fucking autistic of me. Okay, let's separate this out a little. Who are the best of the best? Who are the absolute goats? The goatiest of goats. Um, Personally, if I have to pick a brother, it's gonna be Rinji. Sorry, Leeam. I think the bug stays down here. Blake has to go up. Most picked hero. Ryu, I think is just that Reborn is just so effective. If I have to pick one support, I don't want Puck or Naomi. I said Naomi was my favorite, but I think I lied. I think it's actually Puck. Naomi's just a little more. I don't know. What you call it? Ah, I forgot the word. Whatever. Specific to certain situations. I'm sure someone can figure out what I was trying to say. Let's just have 5. Who are the 5 absolute goatiest goats? Maybe Ira? No, no, no. It's Atrios. We love the tanks. He's the coolest of the tanks. All right, new list complete. Ish. Do I? Yeah. No, I think that looks good. The S tier is pretty large, but that's okay. I feel like I've just the reborn thing has made me like so many heroes much more, which makes it a good change, you know. But yeah, so I think this is the final list. This is like a good combo I got up here too. We got an F damage dealer, we got a physical damage dealer, we got a support, we got a tank. Guess we don't have any casters, but I guess I'm biased. We have Ryu here instead. Could maybe change out Ryu for Joanna, but no, no. I think this is accurate to my opinions. These are probably like the 5 goats. This would actually be like a pretty decent 5-man team too. That was not my intention, but it definitely would be. So yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's that. Apologize, it's super long if anyone's going to bed and has now fallen asleep. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you next time.